So we will start that recording. And so let me just get started. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Vicki Jamie. I'm the Principal and Creative Director at Communication via Design. And I'm happy to welcome you all back to our last session. I'm a little sad this is our last session of our September series. We've had a lot of fun doing it. We've really heard from a lot of you folks, and we've chatted and we've learned along the way. So this has been a really terrific experience, and I hope you found the same. Communication via Design is a brand and digital design company established in 1993, and we set out to help our clients communicate their value and their values to their audiences. Our solutions are rooted in sound strategies, which leads to on-target design and digital solutions that achieve measurable results. Services and solutions include the full spectrum of brand strategy, identity design, digital design and development, event marketing, and digital marketing and analysis. Creative Coffee Break is an informal forum to explore strategies, tools, answer questions, and share our collective knowledge. So this is meant to be fun and informative. We do welcome your active participation. So again, please introduce yourselves in the chat feature. If you're not familiar with where that is, that's in the bottom footer of your screen. And it's on the bottom toward the right-hand side. So I'd like to quickly just introduce you to my expert team. We have Brittany Bethune, who is our office administrator. Brittany. And we have Brian Sanders, our technology director. It's Brian. And Amy LeBeau is our associate art director. And Gail Snow-Moraski is our digital marketing and analytics expert. It's Gail. And today I'm especially thrilled to introduce you to our future speakers and valued partners from Liz Page Associates. We have Liz Page and Amanda Harless, who will be speaking about event planning and marketing. We've had a wonderful partnership over many years, and we've worked with some terrific clients together, and they have just a boatload of knowledge and expertise in this area. And so I'm sure you're in for a really exciting discussion today. And before I hand over the introductions to Liz and Amanda, I just want to sort of address the question of what is event marketing? And that's really a strategy to promote an online or offline event through various channels. It creates buzz and entices people to join in. But why is a marketing strategy so important for successful events? And there are four reasons for that. And first of all, it gets you the attention to drive attendees to your events. Secondly, it helps identify what resources are available and how to budget your help and drive your strategy. And third, it allows you to reach the right target audience in an effective way, knowing the best way to make an impression. And lastly, and most importantly, it creates awareness around your event from the moment the idea to host an event is conceived to the point that the event actually takes place. So that's a bit about why the strategy is so extremely important. So with that, I will hand it over to Liz and Amanda to introduce themselves and to start the discussion.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz, and proud owner and principal of Liz Page Associates. We've been in business 26 years, and we are event producers, but our real niche is that we are fundraisers at the same time. And it's bringing that event, that dramatic, impactful, inspirational event experience together with sound, I hope, unique and expansive fundraising strategies that coach a client to create an event that is emotional and connects with your audience, but raises significant dollars at the same time. And our world has dramatically changed in the last few months. I want to introduce my partner here, Amanda Harless, to say a few words about who she is.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much to Vicki and the CviaD team for having us here. It's been a great pleasure to be a part of the series, and we're excited to talk with everyone about events today. I'm executive producer here at Liz Page Associates, and I'm fortunate to be virtual event and meeting management certified now, because when our world changed, we had to change with it. So we're excited to be talking with you about some of these changes today and hope that it can be helpful for you in your events program. So I'll hand it back to Vicki. Oh, you're on mute, Vicki.
Sorry about that. A number of questions have come to us, but yet we do welcome your further questions in the chat feature. So feel free to send them along or feel free to chime in. It really is meant to be all engaging. So I think, I think Amanda, I don't know if you want to maybe get a sense of the group's experience with virtual events.
That would be great. So by show of hands, or for those of you who have your cameras off, maybe drop it in the chat. How many of you have already produced a virtual event? How many of you have been down this road before? There's Helena and so many other friendly faces today, familiar faces. All right, so it looks like a couple of virtual events in the mix so far today, Friendship Works and Charles River Conservancy. Okay, how many of you are currently in the process of planning your first virtual event? Okay, few more, definitely some in the mix. And how many of you are on the fence, haven't done it, maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't, but you're just here to learn more? Janet, okay, all right, good to know. So lots of people in the process now, so I'm guessing you're gonna have lots of specific questions today, so that's great. So now that we have a sense, Vicki, of where people are coming from, let's go ahead and dive into the Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'll throw out a question, and maybe Liz can answer this one. How do I take my virtual event to the next level?
All right. So this, I'm going to hit you with something that's that has been a big surprise for us, and it is going to be a surprise to some extent for you too. What the goal of your event is. Now that's the same as a live event. What's the goal? Then what are the messages that you want to communicate? Because we're going to be working in a much more compact timeline now. We're thinking of many of our events in the 30 to 35 to 40 minute range. We don't have 3 hours like we used to have. We don't have a cocktail reception and then come in and have a big dinner and have programming that brackets that. It's a very different world now. We are television producers. So what's your goal? What's your messages? What's your content? And I'm going to circle back to that in a minute. What's the content that you're going to put forth here? And then what are the activities that you want to do? Do you want this to be interactive in some way? Do you want to have a chat feature where you're live responding to people who are sending in questions or making comments? Do you want to do a poll where you're asking people to make a choice on screen, whether it's a trivia exam or it's a poll of information about your organization? Do you want that interactive activity? Because if you do, that means you want a live aspect to your event. Now, here's where it really changes, and it changed dramatically for me, and it's going to be the same for you. In the past, when we signed on to do a live event, we would meet with the client, we would really have this great discovery session with them and the volunteer leadership, figure out what the message is, figure out what their assets are, who are their friends, where are their relationships, who's their major sponsor, and how might they want to have visibility? And it would be a process. We'd get the venue, we'd create the fundraising campaign, and creating that program would be a process that we would work towards. That has changed now. You need to figure out what your program is at the very beginning, because from what that program is will come the platform, the budget, the people you want to engage. It's very different. And I'll tell you, I'm still adjusting to that. because you have to quickly go to the heart and soul of what's going to happen in that 35 minutes. So that's a big change. I want you to really take seriously celebrity involvement. It is a big driver right now to virtual events. And sometimes you have to pay for it. Sometimes you're going to discover that there's a relationship that you didn't even know about. And I'm going to give you a great example. We're about to do an event for a client, and it turns out that the person who is getting the Lifetime Achievement Award is the brother-in-law of Katie Couric. And that allowed us to gently and strategically go to Katie and ask if she would be the host for this event. And fabulously, she said yes. So it's a gift on her part, but it may be that you have some relationships that you can discover that will bring celebrity involvement to you. And it may be that you go to an agent and make an offer. The days of celebrities having to fly into Boston and get a hotel at the Four Seasons and wine and dine them and pay them a significant fee may be over for the time being. They're sitting in their living room like you are as well. So you can make an offer to a celebrity, and it can be way under what they normally get, because you might be asking for a 3-minute introduction that they do from their living room. So take seriously celebrity involvement, and whether it's entertainers or it's sports figures, figure out how you might be able to add that sizzle, that is that extra thing that makes people want to tune in. After being on Zoom all day, makes them want to tune in to you and be part of your event. Tech support. I can't underscore how important that is now in our virtual world. The chances of you being able to do this event on Zoom by yourself, I feel, get slimmer and slimmer every day. We saw an event, we saw a virtual walk that completely got turned on its head because Zoom was out across the country that Sunday morning. And just this morning, Amanda and I struggled with our internet was out. You have to have a backup plan for everything. And my feeling is, in this new world now, you need an event producer, you need a graphic designer, you need a marketing team, you need a video producer, you need a host, and you need a very firm platform and tech support that gives you what you need and provides you with almost a fail-safe plan. You know, there's never going to be a completely fail-safe plan because it is a virtual world and things happen. But, you know, there was never a fail-safe plan in the live event world either. What did we all do in the midst of a snowstorm? You know, what did we all do in the midst of a fire alarm going off in the middle of our event, which we have lived through? So there's never 100% security, but you need that AV team behind you to give you that solid platform. And I really want everyone to think about this. I want you to be looking at every virtual event that you can tune into and learn from. I am on everything all the time now, as much as I can be on, because I'm learning new things all the time. This is a new frontier for many of us. Maybe in the past we have streamlined a conference, you know, and done a live feed from a conference, or maybe we've had a webinar, but this is a new world for all of us. And we are all trying to figure out, how do you engage that audience and how you keep that audience? Amanda, I hope I don't steal a talking point from you later, but
We're about to, I can tell.
all right, I'm going to save it for you then. You take that over and tell us, how long is our attention span now in this new virtual world?
Oh, okay. We'll get to that one.
All right.
I mean,
All right.
be forewarned, everyone. It's short. It's really
Sure. But so before I end, I just want to say, Everybody is doing things a little differently, and I want you to give yourself license to do it differently. Just because one organization did it for their virtual event doesn't mean that you have to adopt that either. Don't be afraid to experiment, and don't be afraid to figure out what is right for you. What's right for you and what's right for your audience.
That's a great answer, Liz. Thank you. That's really comprehensive and quite tactile. Moving into the next question, which is a little less on the tactile side, how do I ensure I deeply connect with my audience? So maybe Amanda, you can address that one.
So we thought what would be helpful to do here is actually go through two very different case studies of Liz Page Associates events. And we can get into any of the details more if you put in the chat or raise your hand. But let's start with Boston Harbor Now. That's an organization that had a series of events. 2 events were canceled during the pandemic. They decided to set both of those existing live events on the shelf and create one new virtual event. It was called Our Harbor, Our Home. That event exceeded its fundraising goal. And like I'm sure many of you are doing, they had a traditional sponsorship campaign where they went to some of their friends and partners and exceeded their goal quite significantly, actually. So that's great news from out in the world. In terms of the program, that group opted to do entirely pre-recorded content. They had about 300 viewers on the webcast the night of, which was about what they expected. As of a couple of days ago, that video online has now had 2,300 views. That's something we could have never experienced in the live events world. So it's great to be thinking about how do you market your event and your messaging post-event, right? It isn't just in the lead up to the event. With live events, we often talk about how the event wasn't the end point. It was a new beginning. And that's absolutely true for these virtual events as well. In terms of the audience engagement for that event, they opted to do breakout sessions. They were actually Zoom breakout sessions like we're in right now. They did a pre-session, played the recorded content outside of Zoom, and then brought people back into Zoom for breakout sessions afterward. I have to tell you, some of the guests were positively giddy to see each other. So it was a really nice way for their longstanding supporters to connect with each other. Each one of those breakouts had a staff host, and that's really important. And we can talk about breakouts more today if you'd like to get into that in a little bit more detail. They also opted to include chat in their video premiere. So the platform in which they played the video, which we'll talk about more later today, enabled chat, and some people had a lot of fun with it. They were reacting to the video content and things that they connected to, so they enjoyed doing that. But the really, really special thing that Boston Harbor Now did was catered food delivery. So for sponsors, yeah, I saw, especially Ellen, yeah, it was a really big deal. So for sponsors and really upgraded ticket buyers, they got a full catered meal. And they used Max Ultimate for that event, and Max did a beautiful job. It was this gorgeous box wrapped in a bow, all of the items nestled into the beautiful packaging inside the box. And aside from the great experience that the guests had the night of with the wonderful meal and the polite delivery from the caterer, it was a chance for the staff to connect with their donors more in advance. It wasn't just fill out a form and see you there. It was, oh, are you going to be on the Cape? Where are you going to be? Are you going to be at home? Great. They also did a really interesting thing, which was for any guests who were outside of $4.95, they sent them a meal delivery from Legal Seafoods because they deliver nationwide. So there are catering options if that's a way that you're looking to connect with your crowd. It was a huge success. And when some of the guests came back on the post Zoom, they were there with their cake pops, you know, from the dessert package, having that kind of common experience. It was great. And then that event did a text to give as well. So that was another way to engage the audience, to tell them, we need you now. Please do what you can to support us. And so that live text to give was happening during the event. The other event we want to talk with you about today is a case study in terms of audience engagement, is an event we'd actually like to invite you to. And it's an event near and dear to Vicky's heart because she is on the board of the Boston Preservation Alliance. So we are working with them on their 32nd annual Preservation Achievement Awards. coming up on October 15th. And if you visit, and I can put this in the chat after I stop talking, bostonpreservation.org/awards/2020, you are invited to attend for free. If you're interested in purchasing an upgrade ticket, you can join the post-event reception, not Zoom, but Breakout Rooms. So that program is going to be very different. That's the event that Liz just talked about a moment ago that has Katie Couric as the host. So we'll have a celebrity appearance. That event will have a blend of recorded and live content. So it's a very, very different level of production than what you will see if you go back and watch the Boston Harbor Now video. There's a lot of content being blended into about 45 minutes in that event. And many of you who are transitioning a previously existing live event to a virtual event might appreciate this. They had announced their slate of awards before the pandemic. So there are 11 awardees to be recognized on this virtual event that we intend to do in 45 minutes. So of course it won't be the traditional, 3-4 minute video per awardee to tell their story. In fact, the theme of the event is there's more to the story. So we're applying that to the awardees as well. We're sharing a preview of these awards, but there's more to the story. So we invite you to join us in the weeks after the event. They'll be premiering full videos for each of the awardees and inviting the awardees to join these premieres. So again, it's a way to take the event content and stretch it out for greater engagement of your audience or specific segments of your audience. That's an event that we'll be doing, as I said, breakout rooms. The very top sponsors are invited to a pre-event breakout. Everyone for free is invited to the main content, and then sponsors and the upgraded tickets are invited to the post networking reception. And that's an element that was very important in the translation between their live event to the virtual. They wanted to retain that important, in many cases, professional networking that they're doing. There's also going to be a fun trivia challenge for that event. So the very content of the event will spark questions that will be asked and answered live as part of the broadcast. So that should be very engaging for the guests. And some of the questions will be a little bit irreverent, some of them like very content focused. So that should be a lot of fun. There's also a fan favorite voting that's happening already on the Alliance website. Guests can vote for their favorite project that's being given an award, and we'll finish up the voting on the night of and then reveal the fan favorite on the night of. And then again, that event will have an opportunity to give fund admission during the event. So there are many, many ways that we are attempting to draw the audience in for active participation. So I'll leave it at that, and we can talk, if you want, about any of those elements in more detail later.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. That's a terrific answer. And thank you for that shout out for the Boston Preservation Alliance as well. We would love to have you join us. I think it would be a lot of fun, and you certainly get a lot of Boston history as well as where it's going. A great wealth of information there. And that segues actually quite nicely into the next question. With all of what you're doing and what you're describing is certainly evolving so quickly. And I imagine even conducting an event a few months ago is quite different in the way that it's done than where it's going. And I think if you attend that Boston Preservation Alliance, you'll see a lot of that Liz Page Associates work in action. But that leads to the question, what are the new best practices for events in the virtual world right now?
So, no, I think everybody knows by now, you cannot take your previous live event and pick it up and put it into the virtual world. That cannot happen. You cannot put somebody at the podium. You can't put your CEO at the podium with some talking points anymore and say, go for it, Bob. Go for it, Linda. That just doesn't happen. Now you live in a world that is measured in seconds and minutes. And you are stitching that together in a much closer way than you've ever done before. And the first big message for best practices is shorten your program. Make it much more streamlined and work with your speakers in advance. If anything the virtual world is showing us is the unique picadillos, bad habits that so many speakers have, whether it's rambling without a discipline, whether it's stitching together every sentence with or whether it's not looking that audience in the eye and addressing them, you know, personally, like Joe Biden did last night. We have to work with our speakers in a much more disciplined way. You absolutely, positively have to work with their remarks. If you can't afford a teleprompter, you really want to have that. And you want to have the kind of teleprompter in a perfect world where that speaker can look into the camera, but read that script at the same time. You also really want a rehearsal. And I know how hard that is for everybody. In the live event, I know it was almost torturous to try to get that chairman of the board into that ballroom in advance to do a sound check and run through their slides. It was incredibly difficult because they wanted to be in the cocktail reception. But it is so important now to have a rehearsal. So that is really
bad. If it's live content and the person is not available to rehearse, then they are not live content. Can't do it. Can't wait. Have to pre-record them if they can't rehearse.
Yeah. Now, everybody loves the idea of pre-recorded blended with live. That is a wonderful mixture if you can afford it and it really works for your event. But it is a significant cost to do live because you really want to put that person in a studio with lights and sound and a teleprompter and a backdrop and everything. You're going to give them everything they need to be their best and give that best presentation. Anytime you can get away from a talking head, now I'm going to take them out of the studio. Anytime you can get away from that in the virtual world, do it. If your organization takes care of homeless people and you have a residence that you could have your executive director walking through as they're talking, or walking down a city street and have that camera follow them, anytime that you can bring action, especially when it's connected to the mission, go for it. You know, it means a camera crew, it means a little more expense and a lot more planning, but in the long run, it will be worth it to you and it will really distinguish your event. If you're working with remote presenters, absolutely pre-record them in advance. Whether it's an entertainer or a speaker, you want to make sure that everything is, that they are presented in their best light and there's no glitches, and that if a key sentence is forgotten and you want them to repeat that, you get that chance when you're pre-recording them. So get as much as you can in advance on tape so that you can edit together in the best way. Test all your equipment in advance. I mean, even for today, even for this simple salon series, we were all on 15 minutes in advance and we discovered a few glitches and we fine-tuned some sound and some camera angles. So even more important that you get on early, you plan in advance, you test all your equipment, and you train everybody on how to conduct themselves in this virtual world so they can be their best selves. You want everybody to come off as best as possible, and it's different than what they've been using. That's helpful. Those are some of the best practices we are seeing now.
And one of the reasons so many of those best practices are so important is because of Liz's favorite horrifying stat, which is that attention seems, in many cases, people log off from the webcast after 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Make those a really great 12 minutes. Get your ask in nice and early.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary for all of us who are used to having an hour, hour and a half available to us. What can you do in 12 minutes? Well, it's our job to figure it out now.
And now you're fighting. You're fighting with kids. You're fighting with dinner. You're fighting with dirty dishes. You're fighting with work that they haven't completed for the day. You know, there's so much competition, whereas you used to have them sitting at a 60-inch round, captivated at the Marriott ballroom. Not so anymore.
Yeah. All good points. It's how do you get that attention? How do you keep that attention, right? Those are biggies. Then there's another question, and that is regarding the event itself. How do I make my virtual event stand out from all the others, especially if you're doing one in which you're moving a long-standing in-person event to online?
So I'll take that one, Vicki. I think going back to something Liz said earlier, you know, thinking about your content, your message is the most important thing here. What makes your organization unique? Talk about what is authentic to you. That will automatically make you stand out from others. I think it's important for everyone to be telling their story of adaptation right now. How is your organization reacting and being proactive in these times? You know, what is your new story you want to tell? Like, be positive. What are all the things you have accomplished and the goals and the vision that you have? But also be honest. Tell your audience what you need, how they can help you. You know, not every organization has all the answers and is doing everything right. You know, you could use help, sometimes in more ways than just financial help. So talk with your audience about that. You know, be vulnerable and let them connect with you in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Liz already talked about the fact that we're creating TV productions right now, and I would just add that I just think there are a few must-dos here. So you have to present a high quality production that's authentic to your organization. Your technology must work. Your program must be shorter than your live event. But otherwise, things are flexible. There aren't firm rules here. You can find the way that is most authentic to your organization, and that will help you stand out.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add something here that I'm going to contradict what we're just saying, but I think it's an important contradiction. We're saying shorten, 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 okay? For everybody, I think that's a really important message. But I do want to say that I was on a virtual event a few nights ago, and I was on for 2 hours. And I stayed with it for 2 hours. Now, 2 reasons. A, I'm an event producer, so I'm fascinated by everything that's going on in the virtual world. But the more important thing is, it was for the Human Rights Campaign, which is all about LGBT equality, a subject that is extremely close to my heart. And so I was really interested in that content. And I think when you're representing an organization where people are really personally involved with the mission, not just from a humanitarian standpoint, but because it affects their life personally, I think you've got a little bit more wiggle room in the timing. But in general, I think less is more in this world. But
Good.
I had to add that I was on a virtual event for 2 hours, authentically, really connected.
That's fantastic. Great. We have some questions that have come in, so we're hoping to get to all the questions. This one segues into it. With all the noise out there and everyone's level of exhaustion, what's the best way to market a virtual event and get people to show up?
Ooh, interesting. Does Team CviaD want to take the first pass at the marketing piece?
Oh, well, you know, I would say the first part of that has to do with Liz, what Liz was just talking about being authentic. You know, there isn't one solution or one way to do it because there is no right or wrong answer. And each organization's audience, market, challenges, and opportunities are different. So there isn't a one size fits all, but if you're being authentic, if you're using your authentic voice, when you talk about that product or service or solution, that's going to go a long way. And that way you will connect with your audience. And it's most important to do that. And and keeping in mind that the times we're living in, and and what our target audiences are going through, we need to put ourselves in their shoes, and talk to them, and come across as being as genuinely empathetic as we can be. So just being in that right place is really the place to start. And then also, just how is this going to help in the moment? Like, how is their participation going to make a difference? Because that's what we all want to do, and that's why we show up. So how are we how are we doing that? I would even invite Gail to join in on, how just tactically, we've been going about targeting some of, this kind of call to action. Yep. Gail, I think you're muted. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah, so we're working with a nonprofit on a project right now, and we've been talking to them about a lot of these things, that basically you really want to come across as being helpful and part of the solution and not part of the problem. And you really, really need to communicate what your contribution and value is, and really make sure your audience understands how you're making a difference, particularly during the pandemic. So before you ask people to attend an event or donate, you really want them to understand what your impact is. So if you don't really have that ironed out, that's something you need to work on, really understanding what your impact is and how you can convey it. And it may require some deep digging and getting those figures that you can share with your audience. And I think just share, whether you share that on your website in a blog post, whether you share it on social media, or you try to get a reporter to cover your story by pitching them or issuing a press release. You just want to keep conveying what you're doing to make the world a better place right now, and also provide some information that might not be directly related to the work that you do, but might be helpful to your target audiences during the pandemic. So you just continue to be seen as a helper.
Yeah, and to go back to what Liz and Amanda were speaking about earlier too, it's actually providing an element that is a draw. So whether that's a person, a celebrity, that helps to get people to show up. And the other is just, everyone needs a little bit of a break as well. So whatever you can interject that will just sort of take them away for a little while, it's okay.
That, Vicki. Like, does everyone remember when we did live events that they were fun? Lead with the fun, the joy, the ability to connect with your friends. If you have a committee for your live event that you're transitioning, continue working with your committee.
Exactly.
Bring their friends in, and give them a breakout room so they can connect with each other. Let's not forget the spoonful of sugar part. These events aren't just medicine.
Yeah.
Let's not. And I'm gonna state the obvious here, is that we are really living in a lonely time right now. We are isolated from each other, and boy, the other night when I was on the HRC event, I was like, yay, gay people, I love you, my people, my people. But this morning when I was on a committee call with St. Anthony Shrine, it was like, oh, my people, I've missed you. We've worked together so closely for 3 years, and now at least I'm seeing you on the screen. We are hungry for connection. Mm-hmm. So if you have an event that you've been, if you have an organization that you've been a donor to and that you've loved, you want to tune into them. You want them to give you a good, concise, well-produced event, but I think we are emotionally yearning for connection. So I think our audiences are there for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
If we can surprise and delight them at the event, all the better. They'll be more likely to come back again.
Yeah. We work with the Dimmick Center, and each year they put on their biggest annual fundraising gala is called Steppin' Out. And it really is a time in which people come to the event purely because of the entertainment. And they have a powerful speaking portion to the event as well. In fact, John Lewis spoke last year. And afterwards, they have at least 3 really big celebrity bands or groups or performers that come in, and the whole rest of the evening is a big dance party. And so to hold that event virtually this year was quite a heavy lift, but the dance party continues and it will be held virtually. And I think sometimes the show must go on. And people are looking for a little bit of a reprieve right now. So especially if you're in the entertainment, if there's entertainment, and Ellen, I believe you posed that question with the symphony, that is a great draw right itself, because in itself you have the product. So.
And remember, the thing I wanted to say this earlier, especially if you're connected with this mission and you love this mission, imagine that you get half hour, 35, 40 minutes, commercial-free television all about this mission. That is a real plus. Really, really an advantage for us.
Yep. Great. Well, let's move quickly. We have about 15 minutes, and I want to make sure we get through as many questions as we can, maybe getting into more of the tactical. Let's see. How about suggestions for virtual event platforms? That seems to have come up a few times. Might you have, Amanda, maybe you have some suggestions there?
I do. And Brittany's going to share a slide here in just a moment, but as she's doing that, I would just say, before you have any conversations about platform whatsoever, you have to do what Liz talked about earlier, which was design your program. What are your must-haves? What are your must-dos? Because you don't want to be stuck in a platform that can't handle you. You could not put a symphony in Zoom. That audio is not going to work. You also don't need to pay for a $20,000 platform if all you really want to do is show a video and have some chat. So figure out what your needs are before you start the platform search. And regarding that platform search, I would say the most important thing is to work with your tech providers, work with your AV team. You really don't need to be doing all of this research on your own and trying to figure out how to use this technology by yourself. You should be partnered up with a tech team who knows the tools, who has some favorites, who can execute it beautifully. That's really a safety net that you should very strongly consider. So I thought we would do kind of again in the case study method. I thought we'd talk through a few events that we've done so you could see the examples that these clients did. So the first column there, or the first row on the top, is from an event where the client hosted the stream. It was actually a fully live program hosted on their own website, and the streaming service was Vimeo's live stream platform. So the AV provider was sending the content in through live stream, and it popped up on the client's own website. That was the entire event. The Boston Harbor Now event that we talked about is on the next row here. They used a combination of Zoom for the breakouts, YouTube premieres for the pre-recorded video, and then we went back into Zoom for additional breakouts. Now I threw this Vimeo, it wasn't Vimeo live stream, but it was regular Vimeo on here because YouTube premieres is not a supported product. So if the YouTube premieres video had failed, we had an email ready to go with a link with the video all uploaded into Vimeo already. We could have said, looks like YouTube is having problems, please click here instead. So that was a very tight budget event where we didn't have layers of safety built in through a tech team, so we had to make our own. Both of those first two events had the capacity to stream through Facebook Live as well. On the next line down is the tech stack we're using for the Boston Preservation Alliance event that we talked about. So their breakouts are going to be using Cisco WebEx. Their breakouts had some specific needs that could not be met through Zoom. WebEx could meet them. And then our event platform is Issuer Direct. You've probably never found that on a Google search. I had never heard of it either. It happens to be the platform that our tech provider is super comfortable with, and that makes a lot of sense for us to stay in that platform. However, the polling feature in Issuer Direct isn't very good. It's not a very robust polling option. So we're stacking on Poll Everywhere. So we'll link out to that as part of the event. We have another event coming up that looks like it's going to be all pre-recorded content. So we're setting that into One Cause, which is a fundraising platform that has pivoted to have a space to showcase events. So you'll be able to do your donations, show your thermometer, all of that right in One Cause. And aside from One Cause, all of these other events had additional registration or donation software to get people signed up and into the site and to accept their donations. So most of these are actually pretty simple, kind of almost consumer level products. The Vimeo live stream, we were working with a tech provider that had the like Uber account, so they had live support, and same with Issuer Direct. And if we go on to the next slide, this is a tiny little sample of some of the other platforms that are out there. And I would just really want to double down on working with your tech provider. Brightcove, for example, is on this list because it's Mass AV's favorite. You know, whenever they can put their events into Brightcove, they do, because they're absolutely expert at it now. So it makes a lot of sense for their clients to be using Brightcove. But you have to figure out what are the features you need. So VFairs, for example, if you were doing a conference and you needed like trade show booths, that would be a place where you could go. But for a regular fundraising event, you don't need the trade show booth capacity. So you don't need to be in a platform like that. So this is such a hard topic to discuss with a general group because every group's needs are so unique. And so it's important to start with what are your needs and what is your budget. So I'll stop with the platform there because that's probably more than anyone wants to hear.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. A question, this came up from a couple of the attendees. What are some tips for deciding between pre-recorded programs versus live programs, or a mix of both?
Well, one thing I would say is there is a big budget difference between the two. So if you have to lead with budget-based decision-making, know that live will be much more expensive. You have to have that crew, you know, camera crew, studio, streaming live, all of that. You couldn't do what Boston Harbor now did, for example, successfully on a tight budget. So if you have a tight budget, consider recording. You can still build some live engagement in with fully recorded content. You can do chat, you can do polls, but the polling just can't be as robust and interactive as what you'll see at the Preservation Alliance event.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think that just because it's pre-recorded, it has to have a canned in advance feel. There's a thing now called Simulive, which is, it's pre-recorded, but you act as if it's live. And you get the feel of this, that it's live and someone's right there with you in your living room and they're connecting with you. But in fact, it's pre-recorded. And I've seen some events where I would absolutely not be able to tell the difference. So before you decide to spend that money, or that you really think you have to go live, have a really good reason why, because you can get that live feel in other ways.
You have to think about things though, like if you want it to be Simulive and your event is at night and your board chair is, you know, speaking and it's a sunny afternoon, well then it's obviously pre-recorded. So you have to figure out what is the vibe you want to get across and then plan backwards for that.
Yeah, we were just talking with a client wanting them to be walking down a city street. And we were thinking, okay, this is going to air at 7:30 at night. What will a city street look like at the end of October at 7:30 at night? What time would we have to film this? So it's interesting. It takes some coordination, but it can be done.
Great. Well, let's get to a couple of last questions. This is a very good one. Do you have a stat if or how much a virtual event is more cost effective given the expense of getting professional support? And the second part of that question is, can you state examples where a virtual event significantly expanded access and reached a more inclusive audience than a traditional live event?
I'm going to take the beginning of this, Amanda, is that the fabulous news is, to me, when you look at virtual versus live, think of how much money we spent on food and beverage and valet parking and all those pieces of a live event. Now, your expenses are going to be significant with the platform and a video producer, but they're going to be less expensive than a live event. And in the long run, even if you make less money, your net return may be as much or more because of what you've spent on it. So I think that's really good news in the virtual world. And you still keep up this connection. You still keep up an engagement and a connection with your audience, and you don't let go of that.
I think in addition to spending significantly less, the other good news, Vicki, speaks to the other part of your question, in engaging more people. So I think all of the events we've done so far, if they existed in the live world before, they had significant ticket prices, you know, multiple hundreds of dollars at least to walk in the door. We're shifting these events to free access, come one, come all. And then like Boston Harbor Now, most of our clients are putting these events up on their websites after the fact, so everyone can experience them. There have been a number of examples across industries of people who are bringing in more guests to their events. And for things like alumni events, you don't have to only access your alumni who are in the Boston area anymore. Your alumni in California can participate. There are so many benefits. I think many of us have focused on what we've lost from the live world, but there is a tremendous amount that we're gaining in the virtual world, and we just don't want you to lose sight of that because there are great opportunities here to take advantage of.
One of the events we're working on right now is the 200th anniversary of the English High School, which is the oldest public high school in America, and it's right here in Jamaica Plain. And when we were thinking about it live, we were thinking, you know, there's a lot of people who will not be able to attend because they have a dedicated alumni association, and many of them are elderly. Now, when we think about taking this virtual, it's incredible that everyone can participate. It doesn't matter if they're in a walker, it doesn't matter if it matter what their health is or their age, they can be with us, and it's an incredible opportunity.
Great, thank you for that. A quick sort of technical question has to do with many events being having broadcasting issues. Could you explain the difference between satellite broadcasting versus other formats, and what would be recommended for a city bandwidth environment?
I cannot answer that question, but if whoever it is, or Vicki, if you email that to me, I can help link up to someone who can answer that very technical question.
Okay. Yep, absolutely.
I mean, what I can tell you is, you know, when we're working with an AV team, we're working with, you know, sort of industrial scale internet access with backup upon backup. Their power has backups. The level of support you get when you're partnered with an AV team versus going it on your own will allow you to sleep at night, and they'll know the answer to the satellite, et cetera, questions.
Okay, great. We have actually two questions, and they're a little interrelated. One is, do you tell guests if an event is being pre-recorded or treated as if it were live? The second part of that is, what considerations should be made when scripting for virtual events to maintain continuity in the program and to sustain energy and the feel of being part of something live, even so it's pre-recorded?
I don't think I would tell my audience whether it was live or pre-recorded, especially if I live elements to it. I would just not mention it. But if there are live elements, I think I would mention it. Mm-hmm. I think who's live from the floor of the Boston Garden, take advantage of that and say that. But if not, and you're going for that simulive effect, I wouldn't mention it. That's my advice.
Talk about their event premiering on that night. So if you do have pre-recorded content, that's a way to talk about it.
Okay.
If it is all pre-recorded, think about other ways that you could build in some engagement. Even if it's just as simple as chat, have a member of your team there being the voice of your organization to make the chat as robust as possible. And we don't all have endless budgets to do live and to do all kinds of different activities, but sometimes the simple works really well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Wow. Well, I think we've addressed most questions. I think maybe all the questions, but of course, if anything was overlooked, or if you have outstanding questions still, I know we covered so much here on this call. So please reach out, and I'm happy to answer questions, field your questions. I hope this was valuable to you. And you know, that's really our goal here, is to provide you with valuable information. And you know, we're here to keep the conversation going. So again, please feel free to reach out. We welcome any of your feedback as well. If we do offer any webinars or series like this in the future, we'd love to know, what are the topics? What's on your mind right now? You know, what are some of the challenges that you're having? So please share those with us too.
Can I add one thing before we go that we never really touched on, but I know everybody is trying to look into their crystal ball and figure out what does the future hold for all of this. And I want to say, as we're planning into 21, 22, 2021, 2022, is that we think the future of events for a number of years are going to be hybrid events, where you might have a small live audience that's with you. They might have to be socially distanced, but there will be the courageous ones who are willing to go inside a building and be with a large crowd. But you're still going to have to broadcast all, if not the largest chunk of your programming, to a virtual audience. And that's called hybrid events. And we think when we get out of this complete, you know, stalemate of social distancing and separation from each other, that's where we're going.
And one of the pieces of good about hybrid is, if you're doing a live event, the money you've already spent on AV, you only have to add a little bit more to that to broadcast it out to the world. What you will really have to do is look at altering your program to make it work for the virtual audience. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thanks, everybody.
Liz and Amanda, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you all. Take good care. Be well, lead well. Bye now.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Vicky and the CviaD team, for including LPA. We really appreciate it.
We love you
Love
guys.
you guys. Love you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.